Welcome to the Kentucky Workers' Compensation Podcast with Ched Jennings of the Jennings Law Offices. This is a free resource for people who actually work for a living. Ched is going to provide information to help you file for and maximize benefits for injured workers. If you're ready, let's talk about Kentucky workers' comp and related issues. All right, well, we're glad to be back in the studio again with attorney Ched Jennings. And Ched, you've got a client, a special guest for us here today. Why don't you introduce your guest?
Yes, I'd like to welcome and thank Bryan Allen for joining us today to talk a little bit about workers' comp. I've just finished representing Bryan in a very significant case. He worked for UPS and sustained an injury, needed a back surgery, and now is no longer able to work. So I've enjoyed representing him and helping him, and we were successful in getting him the benefits that will help him that he needs.
Outstanding. Bryan, looking forward to speak with you today. So first of all, welcome to the studio. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So go ahead and kind of walk us through it. So you're at UPS. That's a tough place to work to begin with.
Yeah, it's a very physical job. I'm a maintenance mechanic by trade, so it's a very physical job there. Worked there for many years, doing heavy mechanical, and things happen. Actual day that I was working, I was doing a job I'd done many times before. Over and over, I was replacing rollers on the floor, and I'd got done putting about 50 of them in, and that's how many we put in a box, and I took them over to the bin that I was going to dump them in. Picked that bin up like I'd done 100, 200 times before, went to dump it. As soon as I turned my hands over to dump that in that bin, my back popped, and I could hear it inside. I don't know if it physically popped outside, but I could feel it on the inside.
You knew something happened.
I knew something was up. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Was it in your lower back?
It was actually, yeah. It was actually a little higher than low back, but not the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get this big pop. What happens at that point? I mean, you're hurt at this time.
I immediately sat down where I was at, called my supervisor over, and informed him what was going on. I got a actually sick feeling at my stomach when it happened.
Wow.
So I informed him what was going on, and of course the typical workman's comp deal is they send me to a kind of a rehab place to do physical to try to straighten your back out. And every time I went in there, I left in worse shape than when I went in. They're working something that was messed up, and it kept hurting. The only thing they did, really, I guess, for me was they put heat on it for a little bit, and it'd feel okay. I get home, and I was tore up again.
Right back at it.
Right back at it. And on light duty for about 3 months. And then they said, you can't work here unless you're 100%. So they put me off of the light duty to the workman's comp.
That's gotta be a shock. I mean, you and your wife must have been just devastated at that point.
At that point, we were upset. I had to find a back doctor at that point, which I did. And my doctor recommended that I get a surgery, to fix my back, and I had to get a fusion in my back, and there was also some other discs that were a little bit out of the line, I guess, bulged or whatever, and so once that happened, of course, Workman's Comp sent me to their doctor, which he told me, you better go back today or you ain't going to have a job.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously is what he told me. I immediately called my supervisor. I went to work the next day. I got my tools out. And just getting my tools out was a hell of a job. I got my tools onto my cart, rode down to where I was supposed to be. I said, I'm done. I can't do this. My back is killing me just riding across.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And you're thinking your comp benefits are going to end if I don't do this.
Yeah. So, I was like, I got to do something. And that's basically went down to the local 89 and Chad was in, I think it was Tuesday. Tuesdays he comes in. And I said, hey, I've got a problem. Right. I've got this happened, and I can't do my job. And my back's still hurt. They're refusing to give me a surgery. I said, can you help me out? And he said, sure can. We'll work at this.
Unbelievable.
We'll have to work together to get it done.
Right. Ched, Bryan mentioned something early. He told his supervisor. That's an important step for anybody that's injured here in Kentucky.
Well, it is.
Right?
A part of the workers' comp law is that you need to inform your supervisor or the company. Doesn't necessarily have to be your supervisor that you've been hurt on the job.
Right, and that's a requirement for workers' comp benefits, right?
It is, and a lot of times where that comes, it was very simple for Bryan to know because it happened from one event, okay? But where a lot of people get confused, they start having backache or neck ache or problems with their hands, and their symptoms in their shoulders or knees, they get progressively worse over a period of time. So there wasn't like one single day when you can point to a fact that there was an accident, an injury, slip or fall, whatever was happening. And they also are required to provide notice to the employer that they have a condition or a problem. And which is very interesting because the way that law was adopted back in the 1910, 1914 range was that they wanted the employees who had been hurt to notify their employers so that their employers could take steps immediately to correct the problem or to correct what was done so that nobody else would get hurt. But over the last 110 years, what's happened is it became, and it's the exact same statute that you had back then that there is today, but a lot of times it's been used to defend a case. The insurance companies like to say, hey, you didn't report it, so you're not entitled to benefits. And hopefully we get to a point where we're able to overcome that in every case.
Bryan mentioned something else. He said, they sent me to a doctor who said, hey, I need to get back to work quickly. That's kind of a common scenario, isn't it?
Well, it is. Normally the first step, and I'm sure they did this with Bryan too, is they send you to the company doctors. You went to this rehab, and bottom line is they're trying to help you, but at the same time, they're not going to be the first to recommend an MRI, first to get the diagnostic testing. They're going to be least likely to take you off work. You were almost threatened to go back to work in risk. And that's what is a problem. And what people have got to realize, you're able to pick your doctors for treatment. Now, you didn't know that when you were hurt. You do that. You know that today
I know
after our
very well.
representation. But most people don't know that. And so what's important is, and I tell everybody what the game is out there, is that I call it the avoidance game. What the company doesn't pay out for you, they get to keep. And that's what, so they want to send you to the doctors for treatment or no treatment, but they're going to be the ones that least likely put restrictions on you and are not going to try to run up the diagnostic things to find out what's the matter. And what really changes normally is once, I know it sounds simple, and these MRIs don't cost a lot, but MRIs, and they're not fail-proof. I mean, they basically are, not 100%, but at the same time, they're very good about ruling out things and also confirming things. X-rays can only tell you whether or not you have a fracture. And a lot of times you don't have a fracture, but ruptured discs, torn ligaments, things like that are what are confirmed by the MRIs and then a myelogram. And so you want people to basically find out what their problem is and what needs to be done to resolve it and to get you back to work.
And so, Bryan, you said you went down to the Union Hall, and you found Ched down there on a Tuesday or whatever, and you guys talked. You guys actually knew each other previously, though,
yes,
right?
I'd had a couple other injuries which resolved themselves, and I got back to work, and I was working through those. And I guess you call this the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly.
Exactly. Because, I mean, it was just one I'm not capable of getting over. Wow. I've lost a good hobby, too.
Yep.
Well, what's very frustrating for every employee that has the misfortune of sustaining a work injury, it starts becoming a very big pressure. Are you able to get back to work? How am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to take care of myself at this point in time?
Absolutely.
And it is rough. And that's part of my satisfaction I've really enjoyed in practicing these cases and being a workers' comp lawyer, is that it really makes me feel good that we were able to get this case resolved. You get your day in court, so to speak, and you get the benefits actually that the law says you're entitled to receive.
Correct.
Everything I got, Brian, it says right there in the statute, this is what he should receive. But there's a lot of stuff that you have to get over, get beyond, and jump over in terms of processing a case.
Well, just to add to it, I have a brother who also hurt his back at work. He did not get the results. He tried to go do this on his own. That's another reason why I said I won't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And he ended up, in pretty bad shape and pretty much broke.
Well, it's kind of Ched. It's kind of like Ched said that the rules are there, the laws are there. It's supposed to happen, but it just doesn't.
It doesn't happen. You can't make it happen. You can't wish it. You have to actually fight for what's yours.
Yeah. Did you think it would be that complex? I mean, in terms of, okay, I know comp's there,
well,
but
after watching through what my brother went through, yes. I mean, I knew all the hoops and jumped through this ring and that ring, and my mother was a legal secretary, but she didn't understand workman's comp, laws and stuff. So she was trying to help him out when she could, but it's still not enough. You have to get somebody that's determined to stick by you.
that really knows that area of
That
law.
knows that area of law well.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to help you.
That makes it. Well, on that day, I mean, obviously something in your back popped. You're sitting there going, "Uh-oh,
Yeah.
game's changing here."
Yeah.
You must have immediately been thinking about your family.
Yeah.
And because
What's
this is
going to
devastating.
do? Yeah. How's this going to work out? This is not a good one.
Yeah.
I knew immediately this was a game changer.
Yeah.
I knew that just that quick, just a snap. And I what am I going to do? How am I going to provide? Luckily, my children are all grown and pretty much on their own, and they take care of themselves very well, which I'm proud of. It's me and my wife now. How am I going to provide until we retire and halfway be comfortable the rest of our life?
And I got to think, after you spoke to the doctor and tried to show up for work that next day to get back, and you realize I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
That must have been.
That was a jolt.
Yeah.
When I got in there, and I was like, by the time I got on the bus, rode out to where my job was, I was already hurting. Just getting to the bus, I'd walk across the parking lot, got to the bus, get on that bumpy bus riding out there, and beat me all the way out to the end because I was damn near the last stop. So get off there, walk across, clocking in, change my clothes, got to my toolbox, put them tools up there. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I just can't. This is killing me.
That's got to be a feeling.
And
That's
then-
got to be a tough feeling.
And then, I work with a good bunch of guys. So, I kind of miss, my fellow comrades.
Yeah.
I miss them.
Yeah. It's your work family.
Yeah, it's my work family. A bunch of good guys. And they need to know that if something happens, that there's other things to do than just take it and
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Ched, I mean, you get these types of phone calls all the time, unfortunately. And, you've sat there and you've listened to client after client talk about, I thought the company was going to help here, and here's Bryan with the doctor saying you got to go back to work or they're going to turn your benefits off. How do you begin to work with the client to say, hey, wait a minute, there's a different path here?
Well, I think when we have our first meeting, we try to go over things that are going to make the client feel better, and actually that they've got somebody now that's going to stand up for them. And that's the big thing. And if we need to push back on the company. If we need to, we're going to really push back on the company. But the thing about it is that the law's the law, the benefits are there, but what happens before we get to settlement, before we have it resolved with an opinion and award from a judge, is that claimants have unfortunately have to really make some big sacrifices. And one thing I will tell you about Bryan and his wife, they basically had to just about sell everything, and for probably the last year or so could have been living in a trailer to basically be able to get to the end of this case. And that's what makes me feel so good about, because they weren't getting any income. They weren't able to work. They didn't have the ability to have
My
income
wife
to come.
also lost her job during this time the COVID.
Oh, no.
So
Yeah,
things have been bad out there.
Yeah.
And I admire them, but I've told Bryan is just, I mean, he's walked in the shoes. He understands what the stresses are, exactly what happens, and everybody in workers' comp normally with serious cases experiences the same.
Well, in my mind, again, I'm just looking at that going, wow, it shouldn't have to happen that way. But to get to the end, to get to the settlement, to get to the resolution of this, it can take quite a long period of time. How do you address that with clients? And Bryan, is it what you were expecting in terms of the length of this process?
No, and I'll tell you what, along with that length of process, the insurance company has prime times to shut off your income too, which is right before Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, I think they did that to us twice, wasn't it?
Yes.
Shut us down twice, right before Christmas, knowing you're not going to have any money through the holidays. And then it's going to take a court order and have to go through that process to get paid, back pay. They just didn't care. You know, they don't care.
Number on a spreadsheet.
Yep, number. We can make some money here on the interest. We hold off for a while.
Ched, how do you start to help a client cope with this isn't going to be resolved tomorrow?
Well, first of all, every case is a little bit different. And so let's say if Bryan would have come to me after he'd already had the surgery and he was back to work or something like that, it's a lot easier a case to get resolved. But when you have people, especially with serious cases like Bryan, they're going to, I don't want to say play every game, but there's going to be a process that we have to work our way through. I call it through the maze, running to first base, second base, third base, and getting home, that we have to do to have the system respond, to have the case resolved for a fair amount. I mean, serious cases, they'll be more than happy after they try to beat you down to settle it. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to, and I get into this a lot when clients' depositions are taken. In fact, just yesterday where they're asking questions about, well, where does your wife work? How much money does she make? And I object and tell my client not to answer the question.
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
Right.
It's not relevant. It has nothing
What's
to
that
do
mean?
with this workers' comp case. But they're trying to get the information to know just how much they can freeze you out. And that's the problem. Now, in Bryan's case, you have to run the bases, and our first big thing was get the surgery done. Of course, when you have surgery, you don't come out of surgery jumping in and ready to settle a case. You know, you've got to get healed. You've got to reach a point, which is important with the doctors, of when you reach, if you remember these terms, MMI, medical maximum improvement. Okay? And then also what your rating is, and then whether or not you're totally disabled, back to work, or can you go back to the type of work you did. And we pull all that stuff together, and then it's to press it to get it heard by the judge. And then one extra thing that's really with COVID has developed, it's been on the statute for the law for quite some time, is mediation. And here, when COVID came about, the Department of Workers' Claims, in trying to get these cases done and resolved with safe distancing, they developed a mediation program, the REG, and the Chief Administrative Law Judge, Doug Gott, has done a great job of putting it together. And when I tell you this, right now his batting average is about 95% of the cases he gets settled at mediation.
Well, what's the advantage for the injured worker?
Well, what mediation does, and I know this, you've got to understand that it puts us together. When I say together, normally at mediation you have the mediator, which, by the way, doesn't cost the parties anything. He's already employed by the state, so he's serving as the mediator.
And this is, in this case, an administrative law judge.
An administrative law judge. In fact, you can use outside mediators, but I choose to use the current judges. I think.
Well, why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Well, because it's at no expense. And even if the insurance company says, we'll pay for the mediator. I don't like go down that because the first thing that my client wonders is, well,
Is
are
he
they buying
paid
the
off?
mediator?
Home
Okay,
cooking.
so first thing I demonstrate when I go to mediation and talk to my clients about it is that he's provided by the state, or he or she is provided by the state. And so that eliminates that. Then you also have the attorney that represents the insurance company, and you also have a representative who is the adjuster normally. And sometimes, like in the case of UPS, they'll have their representative too, their loss control person. And when you do the mediation, it's via Zoom.
So it's a
okay?
video conference.
Yeah, it's
Video
a video,
conference.
yeah.
The claimant can actually do it from home as long as they have the app and the Wi-Fi. They don't have to travel. They don't have to go. And what's really good on the defense side, and I talk about the insurance side, is that you have the adjusters, and this gets everybody with
In
the
one
file in
spot.
front of them. It gets everybody that has the authority to settle the case there. And then what the chief mediator does, or the chief judge, whoever's the mediator, he splits us into different rooms, and we make a demand, and they make an offer, and then what the mediator does is help pull it together to effectively have a fair settlement. I like to tell my clients, if I don't think it's fair, then we're not going to settle. If I think it's fair, I'll tell
Pretty
you to
much
settle.
what you told me.
That's
Yeah.
right. But there's going to be a gray area where you, and I think we talked about this, where you'll have to decide what's best for you at this point in time. And what's really good about all this, Jim, is that it gets the case resolved. Okay? And in this particular case, we did very, very well. But that's because he was seriously injured and he has serious limitations and restrictions following all this. And he's entitled to what he received. And the big thing about the mediation, he gets a lump sum. In mediation, normally, now the parties can agree to weekly benefits, he'll get a lump sum. Now, if we went to the judge can only give you weekly benefits. And that's okay. You'd get a check for the past due that might be owed to you. But it's been my experience that claimants, it's a lot more helpful to them to get a lump sum of money in, a big lump sum to move forward with.
Move forward with your life. I mean, really, that was our big deal because we lost almost everything to get situated back to where we were before, not even to that point. You know, just to a point where we can be comfortable,
Get some stability back.
get some stability
security.
back and some security, and you know, it's a big deal.
And I'd like to just ask you this, and I probably maybe should have told you that, but you know about the mediation system at this point
Yep,
in time. You
been
went
through
through it.
Yep.
And is this something you'd recommend? Is it you feel that really
Actually, I was impressed with how actually smooth it did go. I mean, it was, from my point, I just sit there at the table and had the phone in front of me, and me and you could talk and not have to worry about trying to talk over somebody or doing something else. You know, it was pretty easy for our point. I thought so.
Well, and it's good for the insurance companies and also the employers. It wraps up a case for them. And what the average person doesn't understand is then they're able to clear up what they call their reserves. Because by law, they have to take what they think your case is going to be worth and set the reserves over there. Mm-hmm. And so if they settle a case for an amount of money, that frees up the reserves, which goes back into their operations. Mm-hmm. And also, it minimizes then at that point in time legal fees, other costs, and just the cost of the case. Normally, people don't go to the doctors as much when this happens. So we're very pleased. And I'm glad you are too, because I think it's a very successful point. As I've talked with our chief ALJ, we've always joked about, we've been around for years, and I've been doing this for many years, and he has too, is that why didn't we start this program earlier?
Right.
It could have been just
A
as
whole lot
successful
better.
10, 20 years ago.
You know, in my case, if it was like a place downtown where we had to go and everything, it would have been really a pain for me to get because to where I'm going, literally. If it's not a short distance, I generally have a walker. And I've got to get out in a parking garage, go find a place to park, get out, get to the court system. It would have been a lot.
Well, and that's
Lot worse.
that's another
That
thing.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just practical.
That's another thing that's come up with this the COVID stuff, we went to Zoom across the internet and stuff like that. Is claimants don't have to go to those hearing locations. Mm-hmm. They don't have to take time or find somebody that'll take them
there. Yeah,
they'll take care of move, and they're able to get it done, and it's a lot easier on injured claimants. And that's what the system is intended for an early delivery of benefits, medical as well as disability benefits, but a speedy resolution of compensation matters. And having hearings where it would require you to drive for an hour or 2 hours
to get to that would
and pay
miserable.
for the gas that nowadays at $4 a gallon and all the other expenses, it's just, again, another barrier that we've been able to peel away with to basically make it easier for claimants to get their days in court.
Their day in court. Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
All in all, I mean, again, you had a serious injury. It changed your career. I mean,
It changed my life.
It changed your life,
Every
obviously.
bit of it.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of hobbies that I can't do now that I used to love. I used to love work on cars.
Yep.
I can't get under a hood. Can't do it. Got to pay somebody.
Yeah.
That's never been me. I've never paid for somebody to work on a car for me.
Right.
And then, my other one is fishing.
Yeah.
I could probably get away with bank fishing, but I used to love bass boat and going down the lake. And there's no way I'm going to get in a boat no more. Just from the pounding that you take riding across the water.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I used to go down to Western Kentucky area, LBL and all that.
Oh, yeah, land between the lakes.
Yeah, those days are kind of gone now.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, I've got to think that the peace of mind has kind of come back for you and your wife in terms of that day when you tried to get back and you realized, I can't do this.
The biggest part has been resolved. The thing from this point forward is, number one, make what we have last. Be smart with it, and we'll get by.
Yeah.
We'll do. I mean, you take two incomes combined, you would be really close to six figures apiece.
Yeah.
And go to $2,500 a month.
It's a big change.
Is huge.
Yep.
And $2,500 a month was what my wife's retirement was worth because she had to retire early because of the COVID. And, it's been a big adjustment all the way around. We used to go and do as we please and travel and have a good time and wherever we went, And now my travel's limited. I don't even know if I could fly a plane across the country right now.
Right. Well, I got to think today you got some resolution to that.
Oh, yeah, I got my resolution back.
Yep.
At least I have not to worry as much.
Yeah.
The weight of worrying, and this is hanging over you for what we've been through this last process about a year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Nice to be able to put it all to bed.
Put it to sleep.
Yep.
I've seen some of my guys that I used to work with while I was out, and I was like, I'm not coming back, guys. It's like, damn, that's a shame. I said, yeah, well, trust me, it's not because I don't want to.
And that's the thing. A lot of people really they want to work. They want to earn that living. They want to provide.
Earn my living. Yeah. It's not like I'm trying to get something for free. It's definitely changed my life to where this will support me.
Good.
So,
well, to both of you, then congratulations on this.
I'm glad. I'm glad I used him. I mean, there's been times where I wondered, give him a call, and like the other night, hell, I didn't think he'd call me back like at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. He'll make a phone call back, even if I have to check into that question tomorrow for you. He at least called back and let me know he got my message and we were moving. And, I'm not very smart with the legal terminologies and everything else. I'm not going to pretend to be. A lot smarter than I was before this happened, but, it certainly helped. I hate to sound like something I'm not, but it helped knowing that he was going to call me back, whether it was the answer I wanted to hear or not.
Yeah.
You know, he let me know what was going on, and you were just going to have to wait. You know, this is a waiting game. You know, when you do your process, it's hard to play a waiting game. That was probably the worst part, I think, for me, is learning that it's a waiting game, and they're trying to starve you.
Yep.
And the closer they can get you to starvation, the better off they're going to have for settling. And that's just, to me, it just seems like it's the way it is. It's unfortunate. And, you know, people just, you know, me and my wife have struggled. I ain't going to lie. It's been a bad struggle to get to the point where we can be okay.
Yeah.
And that's hanging in there is very hard. That's the most difficult part, I believe. You know, you hear those goofy commercials sometimes. It's my money. You know. Yeah, but do you really want a little bit, which is the now, or would you like to be taken care of in the later?
Yep.
That's what it all boils down to.
Yep.
Of course, we all want both sides of that coin, but, you know, it's generally that doesn't happen.
No.
And that process is part of the process I've learned anyway.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Bryan, I've got one more question, but I'm going to hold it. I want to come back to Ched, and then I'm going to come back and we'll wrap up with one more question for you. But Ched, I mean, again, back injuries. I mean, these are fairly common for a lot of the people you deal with.
Yes, I would say that, and I don't know in terms of percentages.
Right.
There is some statistical stuff I could probably look to, but I would say your back injuries are a bigger percentage than, and then you'd be surprised. Shoulders, knees, used to be big with carpal tunnel, you know, cubital tunnel, the upper extremities, but over the years, I think they've made some improvements in the work things on the assembly line and stuff like that to cut down on the repetitive use of things that cause the carpal tunnel. But the back and the necks and the spine is a huge part of the workers' comp practice.
That makes a lot of sense. Ched, I mean, obviously every case is its own case. There's no guarantees of, hey, I did this for this person, I can do it for you. We can't say stuff like that. It depends on the facts of everybody's individual case. But you guys did pretty well on this one, and I'm really pleased, you know, to see the smile on Bryan's face, right. and to know that
for a change.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting when we do. I kid my clients at the start and you may remember me telling you this, that my goal in the case is for you to come out of here with more money than I do, and you did.
Oh yeah.
In that respect, and it's the fees in workers' comp are not substantial. They're capped, and in Bryan's case, capped at $18,000, and you know it's spelled out. The judge approves the fee. It's pretty clear cut, but you don't pay like you do in some of the big car accident cases and things like that, where the attorneys take a third or 40%. This is more of what I call the boutique style, where you're only up to maximum of $12,000. So biggest case maximum of 18 now, used to be 12.
Yeah.
But biggest case I ever settled, and I may have told you this, Bryan, at one point in time, was for originally a paraplegic and a wheelchair, and he needed to have a universal home for handicapped to basically, which add to it. But the biggest case that I settled, and I'm talking about hard cash, was $1.4 million. And I look back on that. Now, my fee was only $12,000.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of people, man, I can't understand that. Well, that's just what the law is. And
well, you know, you look at the time. I sat there and looked at the time. We've been on this particular one. It's been 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years in the running.
And you learn a lot along the way.
Yep.
Yep.
That's the key.
Well, that's yet another benefit of Kentucky's workers' comp law is it's geared toward protecting the injured worker, and the fee should go to the worker. The award, the settlement, those funds are there for the worker, and our laws actually make sure that happens. Bryan, I said I'd come back to you with one other question, and this is just kind of a final closeout question. You've been down a long path now. Today was a good day. Today was a resolution. What would you like to tell other workers here in Kentucky that have been injured or thinking, wow, do I need to, the company's going to take care of me, or do I really need to get an attorney, or, all that kind of stuff?
Well, as my point, I've had more than one injury at work, and I've used Ched a couple different times, like I told you.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, don't go at it by yourself, because you're going to end up on the short end. Unfortunately, if you are hurt, don't go back to work. I'm not telling everybody in the world that, but, in my case I had to put my foot down and say, hey, I can't do this. I remember climbing up a ladder and getting to the top of it and trying to get my last leg up on top of that ladder, and I had to pull myself with my arms to get up there. And that's when you've had enough. Yeah. This is not going to work.
Well, you're risking another injury.
Yeah, I'm risking another one or falling off the ladder, What are we going to do here? This is not going to work. I've got to put my foot down. I got to get fixed.
Yeah.
And until that happens, you just have to know. You have to know yourself and your body. Number one, you got to know yourself and your body. If something is not right, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
With the other injuries that I did sustain, I knew something was wrong. And they put me through the same process each time. Go to the therapy thing and keep walking on it. One was ankle and one was shoulder, which we talked about. And, keep walking on it. Go in there and twist it and pull on your shoulder, I had a slap there.
Yeah.
And every time they pull on my shoulder, it's like, holy shit, And, the process you need to know is to get your own doctor. Get somebody to help you out legally. And stick to the program.
Yep. And follow it through.
Yeah. You have to follow it through, or else it's just not going to work. You give up in the middle of it and cave, you're going to be crippled and not able to do nothing the rest of your life.
Right. Not to mention the financial side.
And the financial recourse from that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You could get a couple years down the road maybe, and you're totally broke.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, it's not us.
I'm taking from your conversation and from your sentiments, especially here at the end, that it was definitely worth the phone call.
Well, it wasn't a phone call. I took a little trip down to 89.
Yeah.
But Teamsters. I would have called him anyway. So.
Yeah. Teamsters 89.
Teamster 89. Went down there and, it definitely was worth the time and effort.
That's outstanding.
End up where we're at today.
That's outstanding. Bryan, again, congratulations on you as a man just being able to persevere through this entire journey, because I know it's been life-changing, as you said earlier. It's been life-changing. Ched, very close friend of mine, very, very happy for you and the work that you continue to do on behalf of the workers here in Kentucky, and just for both of you guys. I hope this new year turns out to be a lot better than it's been for the last few years. But, way to go. Way to go to both of you.
Oh, yeah.
Friends, I hope you found these comments helpful. I hope you found them insightful. This is just kind of some real comments from real people out there that they end up getting hurt. They don't expect it. They hope the company might take care of them, but in many cases that's not the case, unfortunately. And when it is, when it's something you're dealing with, you need to seek legal help. And Ched Jennings and the Jennings Law Offices is always here to help you. They have a website at JenningsLawOffices.com, probably a good place to start. But once again, from all of us here in the studio today, this is the Kentucky Workers' Compensation Podcast. It's what you need to know. Thanks for listening to the Kentucky Workers' Compensation Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back soon with more information. In the meantime, if you like what you heard, please consider sharing this on your social media channels. You'll be doing your part to help Ched support injured Kentucky workers.